I'm here at Jallianwala Bagh in Amritsar, and it was here on the 13th of April 1919 that General Dyer ordered his troops to fire on a large crowd of protesters. It was one of the worst massacres in the history of British rule in India. The context to the massacre was burgeoning independence movements across India, but perhaps especially here in the Punjab. The British government indefinitely extended a package of emergency measures, including the ability to imprison people without trial. There was local unrest. In one episode, an elderly female British missionary was accosted by a gang of youths in an alleyway. General Dyer, who was in charge here, reacted by compelling any Indian who happened to be walking down that alleyway to prostrate himself before British officers. General Dyer ordered his troops to fire that day without any warning. By many accounts, the troops fired for up to 10 minutes or until their ammunition was running low. And you can still see the bullet holes in some of the walls that have been preserved here, such as the one in the distance behind me. The reaction in the British Parliament was swift and condemnatory. Winston Churchill called the episode unutterably monstrous, while Herbert Asquith, the Liberal leader, called it one of the worst, most dreadful episodes in our history. General Dyer was stripped of his command and demoted, but he was allowed to retire, and readers of the imperialist newspaper The Morning Post even raised a fund for him of £26,000, which he was able to enjoy in his retirement in an English village. The victims of the massacre had to wait until 1922 for compensation of their own, and when it came, it was raised from taxes on the Indian population, and Indian victims only received about half of what Europeans who'd been caught up in the massacre received. In recent years, there's been lots of condemnation of the British Empire on college campuses, and occasionally I've been drawn into these debates, usually to point out that things were complicated. The British Empire wasn't invariably irresponsible, it wasn't invariably brutal. Even here, there's some room for nuance. The troops that fired on the crowd that day were Gurkha and Sikh members of the British Indian Army. They weren't members of the British Army itself. All the same, this was clearly a massacre perpetrated by the British, and even if Dyer was an unusually brutal man, he was clearly also a product of the British system. So yes, it is complicated. Yes, the British Empire did some good things, and yes, episodes like this may even have been the exception rather than the rule. It remains the case, though, that the British Empire did some horrific and indefensible things, and the massacre that happened here on 13th of April 1919 was one of them.